Do you love two-player board games? Or maybe you simply enjoy playing board games with your significant other, or maybe your best friend? Well, in this video, we're going to be looking at not one, but 5 two-player board games, all contained in one box. Hi, my name's Danny. I'm an Australian modern board gamer who loves sharing my passion for this hobby with you, my friends, and my family. Come and join me on this journey. Hey Danny, do you like two-player board games? Yeah, I love them because we get to play and spend time together. Well, that's why I brought 5 of them. What? Chill out, dude. They're all contained in the one box. African elephants are some of the largest terrestrial animals in the world. One of their coolest survival features is the way they socialize. Often they'll form herds, and when food is scarce, they'll break off into smaller groups. In Tusk Tactics, you'll put your social relationship with your partner to the ultimate test of strategy and control. Tusk Tactics plays very simply. You move an elephant piece of your color in a single direction along a line, a number of spaces equal to the height of your elephant stack, no more and no less. These stacks must always land on another elephant or stack. It's like the herd coming together. As the game evolves, the stacks become taller and taller, with moves becoming more limited with the larger herd size. Whichever player at the end of the game controls the most number of stacks with at least 4 elephants in it wins and becomes the elephant matriarch. What I really found particularly interesting about Tusk Tactics is the fact that as the game arc progresses, it kind of restricts the amount of choices that you have. At the beginning of the game, you kind of can move any of your pieces around because they all move one space. But as you stack and make those towers of elephants higher and higher, because you've got to move precisely a certain number of spaces based on the number of discs in your stack, you'll find that the options become more and more limited as the tower increases. And this provides for some really interesting opportunities for your opponent to try and steal a stack off you. There's that kind of really cool dichotomy of decision making about whether to best acquire a lot of different herds early in the game so that your opponent has less options, or whether to kind of wait it out a little bit more towards the end of the game where your opponent has more taller stacks, but then you can kind of steal those stacks off them by using your single layered elephants. And that's what's really fun. The idea that you have to be calculated, you do have to plan 2 or 3 moves ahead, and you're often thinking, well, if I move this disc in this particular direction, what opportunities does that provide for my opponent? Can my opponent steal my stack? Is that going to give them an advantage? And so there's this kind of cool tug of war effect that you have to really think about. So move my elephant disc 1 space and claim your stack. Humpback whales are some of the largest and remarkable whale species in the ocean. They possess baleen structures instead of teeth that help them to filter food from the water. To capture food, they use a bubble net feeding mechanism that scoots schools of fish into one location before devouring them. In baleen bubbles, you and your opponent won't be just blowing bubbles, you'll be creating them in each other's way, that is. A game begins with each player's pieces on one side of the board. You'll take it in turn to move any of your pieces in any direction in a straight line. Your piece only stops when it hits the edge of the board or another piece, including your opponent's. This is where the fun begins. Your job is to get your school of fish token into the center space before your opponent does. This is a game of making strong and powerful maneuvers. Baleen Bubbles is an incredibly simple game, yet it's got some complex strategy and quite thinky puzzliness. I still haven't quite solved it, and I played this game quite a few times with my hubby, and I still haven't worked out how he won every single time. What I really like about the game is the fact that every piece literally does the same thing. It slides in any direction and keeps going until it hits a barrier. And what's really cool about this game is that as the game progresses, more and more whales will become more and more closer to this center square. And you kind of want to maneuver the bodies of the whales and also your opponent's whales to try and cushion or use them as a stepping stone to get to the middle. And solving this puzzle is actually quite intricate. And as you move each piece, you're almost thinking, well, am I helping myself to advance? Or am I helping my opponent to advance? And so this is where the abstract nature of this game really comes in. And I like the fact that this game plays super quickly. You can literally play it in about 5 minutes and just really want to reset the game and play it again. The blue mannequin is a South American bird that rejoices when it dances with its favorite avian companions. It's a ritual where the male mannequins try to court the females. Mannequin Mates is a fast-paced game of changing colors. It'll really test your pattern building and combo making skills. Each player controls either the white or purple mannequin species, and on your turn you'll either place a new mannequin bird anywhere on a free space on the board or move one of your existing ones. When you move one of your mannequins, you can move it one space in any direction, except if you're sitting on a tree of your color, you can move that mannequin any number of spaces along those trees in a line. Think of it as an express service, just for your color. If at any time you move a piece so that it encloses your opponent's piece and wedges it with another of your own, your opponent bird flips towards your color. What a beautiful dance routine it makes! The aim here is to actively make 4 birds in a row before the other player to win the game. There are some pretty magnificent moments in Mannequin Mates that I really enjoyed. Whilst it reminds me of Connect 4, I actually think that this has a nice, interesting twist to it. The fact that you're trying to convert the other player's birds into the same color as your own. And by kind of trapping or courting the other birds together and converting more of those discs in your color, you're getting a gradual advantage over having more options than your opponent. And that's a cool, interesting, swinging factor to this game. The idea that, you know, the more that you convert the birds, the higher the chance that you can make that line of 4 to trigger the endgame condition. I really like the fact that those purple birds can go along the purple trees and the white birds can go along the white trees, although the white birds I think have more trees on the board, whereas the purple trees have less kind of spaces on the board. But the whole interaction of thinking about, should I move my bird to trap my opponent or put a new bird out so that I've got another option, kind of really filters into that, I can just go that little bit further, I can just give myself another option, or I can try and make advantage of the positioning of my birds right now. Monkeys are a really cheeky bunch, and so is this YouTuber. Golden snub monkeys are an endangered species that reside in the mountainous forests of China. Their social dynamics often involve a single male surrounded by several adult females. Often they stay in protective social groups, much like board gamers do. In Monkey Monarchs, each player will control a color and aim to either eliminate their opponent's alpha male or claim their starting space. Each monkey in the game can move one space in any direction. What's interesting in this game is how you eliminate and defeat your opponent's pieces. You can defeat your opponent's monkey by trapping them between your alpha monkey and any of the other monkeys of your own color. You can trap an opponent's piece between 2 of your very own identical pieces. Or you can use your opponent as a buffer and wedge your piece with one of your opponent that they own as long as the gender of the monkeys is different. It's a hierarchy of decision making which has you climbing to the very top. Monkey Monarchs was probably one of the trickiest ones to learn out of the 5 games in the box. And that's because there are a couple of interesting, quirky rules around how you defeat an opponent's monkey. What I really like about this game is the fact that there is an interesting dynamic between not only the male monkeys, the female monkeys, and the alpha monkey, and how they are actually positioned on the board. Whilst at first this game kind of looks like you're playing chess by going from corner to corner, it kind of has this cool synergy of going, if I move this particular species into this space, will my opponent's next move fall into the trap that I've placed? And that's a cool little sense of interaction that I like to see in 2-player games. The fact that you can set little traps, and then as your opponent makes their move, if they don't see and analyze their turn properly, they might make a misstep. And that kind of swings the game in your favor. The interesting dynamic here in the game is the fact that you can work together with the same gendered monkeys using your opponent's pieces. And so that crossover between using your pieces and your opponent's pieces means that you've got that extra layer to think about. You might be able to trap your opponent's monkey between a female and a female of your opponent's piece. And so that kind of surprises your opponent when you can kind of clear their pieces from the board. South American sea lions are animals that live in the open sea. At different times during the year, they return to land to secure a safe space for attracting a mate. This territorial behaviour is the underlying inspiration for the mechanism in this game called Sealed Shores. At the start of the game, each player will have 8 seals lined up in 2 columns. What you'll do each turn is that a player will move one of their sea lions along the lines, passing through any number of free nodes as they like, coming to a stop only on a free space connected by the line that they started with. Think of it as a subway map, but instead of trains, we have seals, and instead of stations, we have pointy, sharp, appealing rocks. The aim here is to make it so that one player cannot move one of their seals, essentially sealing them in. Some cool things to note about the game is that the board wraps around, so you can go north and end up in the south. You could go east and find yourself in the west. It kind of functions like its very own seal planet. Sealed Shores is actually quite super strategic, and there's actually quite a lot you have to pay attention to in the game, because each player has 8 seals, which kind of replicates the idea of the male of South African sea lions as they protect their female seals whilst they're breeding and whilst they're raising their young, just really plays for some quite interesting interactions. The fact that the board wraps around, so if you go to the edge of the island, into the ocean, it wraps around to the other side, means that you've got to really tap into that spatial thinking to try and preempt how your opponent's going to move. I also like the fact that because you've got 8 pieces, you can kind of distract your opponent by moving some other pieces and setting up ways to kind of block one of your opponent's seal. And when you lock one of them in, that kind of triggers the end of the game. I found that the geography of where the nodules and the pathways connected and how they moved really took some time to wrap my head around. And once I kind of mastered how the routes worked and what the nodules kind of represented and how you can kind of maneuver that central column of nodules, meant that I could then tap into how I was going to move my seals each and every game. There's some points to consider if you're thinking about getting Wild Duo for your board game collection. First of all, this game only plays at even player numbers. So if you've got 3 people or 5 people or 7 people, there's always going to be kind of one player who's going to sit out and watch. The game does come with like a tournament mode, which I really like, where you can kind of set up all 5 games, kind of pair off and then play 1 game each and then rotate games. I just love that tournament element because you can really play this game for up to 10 players. And because all the rules are actually really super quick to teach and super easy to introduce, you can get a lot of games under your belt. In fact, my favorite way to play Wild Duo with my husband is by just simply playing all 5 games one after each other. And we kind of played the best out of 5, which is actually really cool because we actually scored 2 wins each, and our final game was basically our decider. And I love that about this because it meant that everything kind of felt different every time you played, and the challenge was a little bit different too. So I really like that kind of carnival element aspect to it. If you're looking for something that's really thematic, that tells a story, that has you building something, then this game does feel quite abstract. The components in this game are actually very, very good. The discs are really chunky, they move and slide and look beautiful on the table, but other than the aesthetics, the actual strategy in the game is very abstract and there's not very much randomness. So a lot of the moves and a lot of the wins that you'll get from this game will be primarily based on your own skill and ability. So if someone who has played this before plays against someone who hasn't played it before, then you might find a slight little imbalance when it comes to that. But because the games play out so quickly, you literally can do like a practice game and then get straight into the next one, which I think is super easy to do. What I'm gonna do now is rank the 5 games in terms of the ones I enjoyed the most, one that kind of has the best replay value, as well as one that had the most coolest decision-making opportunities that I found. And so just keep in mind, all of these boards are still in prototype form, so please don't judge the boards as I show them. So the game that I thought was probably my least favorite was probably the Seal one. The Sealed Shores to me just felt a little bit tricky to get your head around 8 different pieces, and then not only did you have to track your own 8 pieces, you had to track your opponent's pieces as well. And so I often kept losing count of where I could go, and because there were so many different options with the nodes, I often kind of lost track of where everything was and where everything could move. This is a game that definitely has a bit of a learning curve in terms of winning the game, and sometimes I found myself, either accidentally winning or accidentally losing based on just my moves in this game. My fourth favorite game was the Baleen Bubbles. As I said, it's probably something that I need to kind of develop and work on and get better at, but just seeing the lines of strategy to try and get my school of fish into the middle was really hard, and the fact that you and your opponent have a school of fish as you're hockey pucking them around this board just makes it for some interesting moments. I still really enjoyed this one actually. My third favorite was the Monkey Monarchs one, where you had different abilities, and I quite liked it because of how it played into, using the males and the opponent's pieces to help kind of advance your strategy, and so it created for a really dynamic puzzle with a really great level of interaction, especially for an abstract game. My second favorite is the one where the birds flip over and change color. I absolutely love this one. In fact, it was actually really hard to decide between first and second. I just love the fact that this one flips all the pieces over. The pieces are so chunky and they just, feel so satisfying. And then when you just kind of move those birds into position and then move them so you make a line of 4 or you convert the birds, it just made me want to just set it up and play it again. And the setup is super easy. Basically, put the board out, give you and your opponent your birds, and then literally start. And even this pattern grid of different tree species just added another layer of thinkiness to the game, which I really enjoyed. And my favorite one out of all 5 games was the Tusk Tactics. I absolutely love this. This was a game which I think was really good because it didn't end as quickly as some of the others in the box. I liked the fact that it had this great progression to the game where you kind of slowly had to decide, at the beginning, which of these shall I move first? You had to also think strategically about when you were going to claim a stack, and then how that stack would then impact your opponent's game plan. And the fact that whoever had the most stacks at the end of the game would win meant that you had to really time when you're going to make certain powerful game-changing moves. Hey Danny, you know what I love about abstract board games? I always tend to beat you in them. After this, we'll play a big heavy Euro and then we'll see who wins. So what did you think of the game Wild Duo? Is this a sort of game that you would see in your board game collection? Are you a fan of abstract games? Or are you someone who's just looking simply to collect every single 2-player board game that's out there? I think that this game just has so much great potential due to the speed, ease of play, and its gorgeous theme. Now, if you really found this video super helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my channel. And if you really want to support the direction of where this channel goes, please head over to my Patreon page where you get to see exclusive Patreon-only videos, as well as influence the sort of videos I make in the future. Thank you once again for joining me for this Board Game Sanctuary video. I hope you found a lot of useful information in this, and I hope your next board game experience is an amazing one. See you later.